Hi everyone. In this playthrough, there will be a lot of strategic decisions made. So as such, I'm going to play this video at normally slow speed. Usually I speed the video up, but this time I'm slowing it down so that I can spend more time explaining stuff. And hopefully can learn a bit on what to do and what not to do against Blue Sun. I'm playing the President CO deck that Netrunner pioneered. Again, check out his channel for a full explanation of the deck. He did a very thorough explanation on it. I'll explain my opening hand. There are lots of cards that I like to see, particularly the plus street, and the two daily cards are nice. However, it's overkill because you cannot play both daily cards on turn 1. In fact, yes, there are too many stuff that cost a lot of money that I cannot play on turn 1, hence the mulligan. With the mulligan hand, it wasn't a good hand either. I didn't like it, but I had to stick with it. So my first turn plan was those green outline boxes, which turns out to be playing daily cards for the money. I definitely need some stream of money going. And followed by Compromise Employee, I believe, and a Fairy. Then the last card would be I don't think I end up playing the last card. Do I? There's no other card that I can play at this point in time. So yes, this is a very lousy hand. When you're not able to play 4 cards from your opening hand, life sucks. And one big reason why I was not able to accomplish this is because in neither of my draws did I find myself the one card that I really need, which is the Supplier. It's a very crucial card. As I said, it allows you to host all the resources and hardware that you cannot normally pay for. Without it, life is very hard. Alright, so he sets up a new remote server. With a single Compromise Employee, I'm prepared to run through. If he reses, he's giving me money. He doesn't res, and I access. It's a reverse account. From the newest data pack, I'll lose 4 credits for each advancement, so I can expect to lose 8 credits at any time, should I not trash it. Here, I decide not to trash it. A very deliberate decision. Why do I not trash it? Because I can foresee myself staying poor for the rest of the next few turns. And if I do want to burst up in credits from the show gamble or something, I can always run his reverse accounts. Leaving that is fine for me because it's not too much of a concern, really. Alright, so I run to HQ and I see the Hive. He doesn't want me to get into HQ. You can assume that he has some agendas in there. Otherwise, he wouldn't rest the ice. Alright, meanwhile, I start drawing out with Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee is very important in this scenario because I desperately need to pull out the plus creep, the 1 plus creep in my deck, as well as my economy, because right now my economy is in a terrible shape. More importantly, installing Mr. Lee allows me to spend my credits. If I don't spend those credits, he will spend it for me with reverse accounts. So that is something to keep in mind. He continues icing up. I can assume that that's a Hive on HQ. Let's see if he reses it this time. He doesn't. And good for him, because the more he chooses to res and bounce ice, the more Compromise Employee gains me. And this is something that he should be keeping in mind as he proceeds through the game. Unlike most other runners, he cannot afford to keep resing and bouncing ice freely, like Blue Suns love to do, because he's feeding off my Compromise Employees. And now that I have 2 of them, he really doesn't want to res ice unless absolutely necessary. So in this instance, you see that he does not res either of those ice. And I score an agenda as a result. There's a big mistake from him to not stop me. Although, yes, you could wonder what ice it is over R&D. My guess is that there are some really big pieces of ice like Hadrians and Curtains that he cannot res. Hence, he allowed me through. So I get the 1 hostile takeover, very important, to deny it from him. But I do need to find my economy. Unfortunately, it's not going to come anytime soon because I just got hit with mid-seasons. Now here, I misplay. I wanted to spend all my credits on the trace, but I forgot that Compromise Employee actually helps me boost the trace. I completely forgot about that. So in this instance, I should have increased my trace to by 3, so my total link strength is 4. But he kindly allowed me to spend the extra Compromise Employee credit to remove 1 more tag. But I didn't impose the extra credit that I had in my bank. I just left it there. So be it. Thankfully, he was pretty poor himself, so he wasn't able to trash my resources. These resources are very important. Very, very important. I'm definitely looking to shake the tax as soon as possible because I'm two Scotch Turfs away from losing the game. First, I run R&D. It's like Nasir, I'm trying to earn money by forcing him to rest ice. If he doesn't rest those ice, I'm going to see more agendas, which is bad for him. So in both cases, he doesn't rest the ice, which is a smart decision, unless I pull an agenda out, of course. And nope, no agenda. I see a Wall of Thorns. Very interesting splash. So yes, reverse accounts, Wall of Thorns, very interesting. So thankfully, with mid-seasons, I'm actually able to keep my credit pool low, so I don't really have to worry about reverse accounts yet. I clear one tag, and by the next turn, I should be able to clear both tags that I have. Double Scotch is not an option for him, thankfully, because he's only on 2 credits. He's very poor, he cannot afford to rest ice. Keep in mind that I did access a Grindel refinery from R&D, and of the 2 shells that is installing now, one of them is likely to be a Grindel refinery. Now, here's the problem. I just freshly installed a security testing the turn before, and he did not trash it. In fact, he made more remote servers for me to feed off security testing, which is a huge mistake. So yes, with more remote servers, I can freely use security testing. And yep, I'm about to make a security testing run here, the first of many. Oh yes, in an earlier HQ run, I also saw a Jackson Howard which I didn't trash. So you can easily assume that of the 2 shells, one's a Jackson Howard, and the one that is advancing right now is a Grindel refinery, which he will so-called score, or rather trash. So now he has enough credits to double Scotch me, but I've cleared all my tags by now. So with mid-seasons in the heap and all the tags gone, I can resume normal gameplay mode. I'm keeping up the pressure by running his servers every turn. If he doesn't rest ice, he's going to bleed agendas to me. He still doesn't rest the ice over R&D, so it really is tipping me off to those ice being Hadrians and curtain walls. Otherwise, he would be raising them. And I see a Scotch Turf. Not what you want to see, but at least I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a second mid-seasons. That thing costs a lot of influence, and I've already seen him spend influence on Jackson Howard, Wall of Thorns, and reverse accounts. I'm pretty sure he only has 1 mid-seasons in his deck. Now I run his hand. He still doesn't rest ice. I see another Scotch Turf. So now I know he's going to have 2 copies of Scotch Turf in his hand. I must either prevent him from getting the mid-seasons back to his hand, or keep afloat on credits, which is not that easy right now. Alright, I finally draw into my supplier, but I choose to bury it because I found the account siphon. If I can land a good account siphon, things will go in my favor. It will really reverse our accounts, and that is something that I'm looking to do. An account siphon is one of the best things you can do against Blue Sun, especially if they're not prepared for it. With the credit swing in your favor, you can actually dodge sea sources and mid-seasons. But I do have to keep in mind that the first time I ran HQ and Res and Ice, it was a hive that was on HQ. You can be pretty sure that he replaced it with the same hive. So since he's above 5 credits, there's not much point in throwing an account siphon unless I want to force him to res the hive. So first I run through R&D. Let's see if he spends his money resing ice. He does not. Once again, I get a free access. Losing access after access is actually a very bad thing if you are playing Blue Sun. You are very weak in the early game, especially if you don't draw that first Oversight AI early, and he's definitely paying for it because I'm basically browsing through his deck at this point, R&D locking him to Oblivion. Next thing I do is to trash his Jackson. After security testing it, he's still letting me security test, which is a huge mistake, and I force him to reshuffle Jackson, otherwise I'll trash it. Now, forcing the Jackson is pretty huge, needless to say. I do not want him to draw into more combo pieces or more Oversight AIs. He does rework a mid-season replacements onto R&D, so that is a very huge threat. If he draws it again, I'm screwed. On my last click, I run HQ. I'll see if he dares to res the ice. No, he doesn't. At this point, if he reses any ice, I'm gaining 2 credits, so he's keeping that firmly in mind. It's a curtain wall, alright? So So far, all I have is a fairy on the table, and that's because I needed to clear my hand. The fairy, I mean, other than that, I've been running naked, no programs at all, no proper rig setup at all, because he's not raising eyes at all. He just used the reverse accounts to suck 4 credits from me, which is a very bad trade for him. Think about it. He spent 1 card, 3 clicks, and 1 credit, the advancement credit. And what did he do? He forced me to lose 4 credits. Big deal. Big deal, because I'm about to security test. Alright, he prevents the security test this time with the Wall of Thorns. But hey, I forced him to rest the Wall of Thorns, so I'm gaining 2 credits either way. He cannot stop my economy because it is resource based. It's not based on show gambles and dirty laundries. So I lose the Femme Fatale and the Account Siphon. Account Siphon's pretty painful, but hey, I don't think I'm going to get into HQ anyway. And he's third poor, so Siphon's pretty useless at this point. Losing Femme is a bit of an issue. Having Femme against Blue Sun is very nice, because you can get into remotes when they would least expect it. Oh well. I run through R&D, and I'm basically spending all my clicks running right now, because he has 0 credits. These are timing windows that you have to take advantage of against Blue Sun, when they do not have... They are weakest right before they can activate the ability, which is during your turn. So once you force them to rest their big eyes, you start running all over their servers. And because he did not rest any eyes earlier on HQ or R&D, he pays the price. I score the Atlas. This is huge. Preventing the Atlas means that he cannot fish out his mid-seasons. I do not need to explain how important it is to deny him the ability to fish out mid-seasons using Atlas. This deck can make money pretty well, but it definitely cannot keep up with Blue Sun. So I either need to drop the plus crit or prevent him from seeing that mid-seasons, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Now here he made what I think is the biggest mistake of his entire playthrough. He's been playing pretty well, but this is the biggest mistake. He installed a curtain wall on a new remote server, and Oversight AI'd it, intending to bounce it back to his hand the next turn. That's a huge mistake. Alright, so I security test his other remote. He obviously doesn't have the credits to keep me out of all his servers, so I'm gaining more free credits from security testing. Once again, I'm not going back to archives because I know he bounced the Wall of Thorns back from there. I'm pretty sure he placed it back on archives, so I do not want to go there again. Now I check R&D and he finally reses a Caduceus. I use my fairy to break the Caduceus, which is a huge mistake. Why? Because I have 2 compromised employee credits. I should be exercising them. I completely forgot about compromised employee once again, and that's a huge mistake. The fairy could be used for breaking Taurus, which is more important. Alright, so I access a Wendigo from HQ, and I emergency shut down his curtain wall. This is why installing a curtain wall on the new remote was a very gross error on his part. Yep, not only was he denied economy, he is also denied protection. And he's opening that new server for me to security test. As long as he has less than 14 credits, I do not have to worry about security testing that server. But in this case, he has less than 8 credits, so I can security test archive safely. Then I run Jackson. Again, I cannot let him have Jackson for obvious reasons. Will he trash it? Yes, he does. Alright, so yes, I'm basically forcing him to use up his Jackson because I cannot let him see the mid-seasons. Once again, if you notice, he's very poor. He has 5 credits to his name and has no rest eyes except for a lowly Caduceus. This is how poor his board state is. I mean, you look at my side, I'm doing pretty badly as well. I have no programs out, I have no hardware out, but I'm at least placing pressure on his central servers every single turn. And I have 3 agenda points. I think I'm in very good shape. Alright, he plays lots of hedge funds, so now he's pretty rich. I have to be careful of that. Once again, I'm security testing his curtain wall server, knowing that he cannot rest the curtain wall. He has 13 credits. 1 short of resing the curtain wall. His intention was to bounce the curtain wall back, which would immediately destroy the server, preventing me from security testing it. But with it in the unrest state, he cannot do that. As such, I'm getting free security testing runs, and I see the Taurus from his hand once again. As you see again, I'm getting free runs on his central servers. He's not willing to rest the ice. because he knows that he's in a very hard predicament. If he reses the ice, he's fueling my economy. And what does he do? It probably just ends the run because it's just a hive. So I'm placing immense pressure on him right now. The suite of Andromeda criminal tools that this deck packs is very strong against Blue Sun. I went to run Curtain Wall because I wanted him to res it. If he resed it, he will only have 4 credits left. I could start exploiting him with HQ or R&D interface. He doesn't bite the bait, so I had to go for something else. I was thinking of what to do next. I was hoping he would res the Curtain Wall to deny my security testing so that I could install an interface and get free multi-access, because he has no credits to res the rest of his ice. As I said, he didn't bite the bait, so my next option was to install an R&D interface and go for a blind run on R&D. Hopefully he doesn't have a Curtain Wall or a Hadrian's Wall inside. The Caduceus, I let him fire, and it is at this point that I realized, hey, I could use my compromised employee credits along with the bad pup that I have. So basically, breaking Caduceus was free. Now the inner ice. What could it be? Will he res it? Yes, he does. Bad news. It's a Taurus. Ouch. So because I used my fairy to break the Caduceus the first time, I don't have a fairy to protect me the second time. This is my biggest mistake this game, using fairy for Caduceus when he has a Taurus in his deck. I can beat the trace, but I am going to use a hardware. Which one will he pick? He does pick the R&D interface, which is arguably, it's very hard to tell which one's a better decision, because at this point I'm running Rampage all over his servers. You notice that every time I'm getting a central access or security testing run, I'm gaining 1 extra credit with Desperado, and it's really paying off. He chooses the R&D interface instead, which is fine as well because I'm going to win pretty soon if he doesn't stop me from multi-accessing. But this does shut me out of R&D pretty hard. I don't really have a hard counter for Taurus except for Femme Fatale. And guess where it is? If you remember, it's in my heap because I took 2 net damage from Wall of Thorns. So in the long term, I'm definitely worried. I only have 2 more fairies in my deck to get through R&D twice. Without R&D interface, running R&D is not an option right now. Until I find my second R&D interface, I'm not going to run through R&D because I cannot afford to get hit by Taurus anymore. So it's my turn. He's still not in the best shape. He has exactly 13 credits once again, so I'm just getting free security testing runs, and this time they're netting me 3 credits. As I said, if he put the Curtain Wall on another server, that server wouldn't exist and I couldn't security test freely. So a very big mistake. He oversight AIs the Curtain Wall once again. It's really weird to see 2 oversight AIs on the same ice, but that's what is happening right now. So I cannot security test that server. I choose the remote, the other remote. I look at my hand, I have an inside job and an emergency shutdown. You know what's coming. I am bloody well going to emergency shut down the Curtain Wall. You bet. But first, I install the HQ interface. It's the hive as I expected. Why did I do a naked run instead of inside job? Yes, I wanted to force him to res the hive so that I would get 3 free credits. Running and getting 3 free credits sounds like a security test. So once you res the hive, I inside job HQ. I get to see 2 cards. It's a Taurus and a Scorched Earth, but most importantly, this triggers the HQ access, which means goodbye Curtain Wall. Your days are done. So Curtain Wall goes back to the unrest state with 2 oversight AIs sitting there useless. This is how you kill Blue Sun. His economy has been dreadfully suppressed. He wants to skyrocket with that oversighted Curtain Wall, but I'm not letting him because I'm drawing into my emergency shutdowns, and more importantly, because he's not adequately protecting HQ. So this is the end of the first half of the video. As you saw, during his last turn, what he did was to install another ice over the hive, so that now HQ is doubly protected. I cannot inside job in 3D as I could last time. I cannot get free accesses anymore. From this point onward, I have to start building up my rig and making surgical runs into R&D and HQ to fetch the winning agendas, or to ninja them from a remote. How successful will I be? Will he find the last mid-seasons, the only mid-seasons in his deck, and scorch me to death? Tune in to my second video to find out.